Hello everyone, this is JB back at you with another video discussing the Dragon Prince Season 2 Episode 6, The Heart of the Titan. So again, like many episodes, they kind of jump around from different perspectives. So I'm just going to cover the events in the episode by perspective rather than the chronological order in which it was presented to us. So we have the Caleb perspective of it, and he is finally reading the letter from his father. And Harold's just saying that he is proud of him. And in his letter, he says that Ezrin will be the king, and that Caleb is to be his close and trusted advisor. And then he goes on to say that, don't believe the lie of power, that true strength is in vulnerability, to reject history as a narrative of strength, but as a narrative of love. And then the last thing he says in the letter is that, he has a secret gift for him, and it was actually at the Banter Lodge. And Caleb is sad at first, but then he realizes that it's actually the cube that he has had that he's had from season 1. The cube with the 6 different signs of the different primal sources. And then King Harold says that this cube belonged to Erebos, who was the master of the 6 primal sources. So that was the storyline for Caleb. We have a short storyline with Rayla, with the pirate. She's having a conversation, and basically that conversation, she just, figures that, yeah, she's not meant to be an assassin. And the pirate, challenges her to ask who she is and what does she stand for. And then we continue on with the back scene. They defeat the rock monster. They're able to get that the heart, but there are definitely a lot of wounded people. And Viren's like, we need to get back to our side before the sun gets up, or Thunder is gonna be out to get us. But Hero, he won't leave anyone behind, and says, no, we're not gonna leave anyone behind. Like, we need to try to get everyone. And so they actually almost get to the other side, but then Thunder, the Dragon King, arrives. And he definitely is powerful. He takes out the queens of Durand because they had kind of said, like, okay, we'll try to hold him off while you get the heart to the other side. So they end up sacrificing their lives. And then Viren is like, I can help. So he tries to help. He tries to go, and he does a couple spells. He does this cool, like, it sounds like he said Aspero, like frozen or something like that. But it's like this ice spell to kind of hold the dragon in place. It doesn't. And so then Sarai eventually is like, well, we can't leave Viren back here. Like, this whole thing would be a waste because we need him to perform the ritual or the spell. So she essentially goes back into the battle with the dragon, and the dragon, like, revs up this big, lightning strike, and takes her out, even though her and Viren were both on the horse, but I guess she got hit because she was the driving the horse, I guess. And she ended up dying as well. So you had the 2 queens from Durin, and then is Sarai, who ends up being killed. But the heart does work. Their lands are plentiful. And at the end of the flashback, we have the touching, scene where King Harold has to give Caleb the news that his mother has passed, and he opens, this was, I want to talk to you about life and growing up, and how sometimes there are changes you don't expect. And that is the same line that Caleb had said to Ezrin a few episodes ago when he was trying to tell Ezrin about what happened to King Harold. So as the flashback, we go back to the present day meeting of the Pentarchy, And, Viren does this, like, inspirational story, and it's like, you will see why we need to defend, humanity because, Katalis, sacrificed himself for Duran, so therefore Duran should be by our side. And Queen Anya is like, yep, my parents probably would have, willingly, helped you guys out, but I'm not them, and I'm still not going to support you. And essentially Viren explodes, and it was like, bruh, like, I just told you this whole story, you're gonna say no. And then the other kings and queen is just like, yeah, we're not gonna support this. And then the episode ends with back with the Caleb crew on the boat, and there's like a shadow in the sky, and they're looking at the shadow like, what is that? And then the episode ends. So here are my thoughts of this episode. First of all, we get the double meaning of the title. Again, this title was the heart of a Titan. And, obviously you have the heart of that rock Titan monster. But I think the also double meaning is the three warriors who sacrificed their lives to save the two kingdoms. And that is all three queens, Sarai, and the two queens of Durin. We never actually get their names, and their names are never mentioned. But I guess just the queens of Durin. And so Durin. So yeah, you get that double meaning of the title again. Next thing is, the dragons are not to be messed with. I know this is the Dragon King, so he probably has the most feats of all the dragons, but he, like, one does not simply approach a dragon. Like, they had no match for him. His lightning strikes were just like, you just like, yeah, they're not gonna make out alive. And three skilled warriors died because the dragon was not to be messed with. And I haven't talked about this yet in these videos, but I've liked the animation this season. Definitely an improvement from last season. We all knew the animation was a little seemed choppy, or seemed that frames were missing, and we kind of got over that. It was like, okay, we were overlooked that, but the animation has really improved. And there are two times in particular where I thought the animation was very well done. The first one was in a few episodes ago when the Caleb crew is about to escape on Fifi from Claudia and Soren, and Claudia does like that kind of dragon snake spell to try to grab Fifi and bring them back. Like, the way that series of events happen, and the way like the camera like kind of goes around her, and like it was this really great animation. And a similar thing happened with Thunder the dragon. After Viren does his like icicle spell, there's this great shot of like, the dragon like revving up his lightning, and it's like kind of panning around the front of him, and like it was just a really good shot, and I really appreciated that. So I thought the animation definitely was an improvement this season over last season. I thought that Sarai's sacrifice made sense. Sometimes people are like, I will sacrifice myself because I want to be the sacrificial person. But Sarai was like, if Viren dies, this whole mission was for waste. Like, we need Viren to perform this spell that I don't agree with, but, we need him to perform this spell. So we need to save him. And so she goes to save him, and that was a sacrifice that made sense. It wasn't just like, oh, we're just going to sacrifice ourselves. But it was like, seemed to be the only one like really thinking about the end goal, even though, she never really didn't agree with the plan, but was going to support it. It's not explicitly said or shown in this episode, but I think the assumption is that King Harrow, after the events of that flashback, would eventually take revenge of Thunder. Like, obviously, that like the Dragon King was killed, and they stole the egg, So I think that's it could be, maybe that might not be true, but the assumption to me is that because of that, then King Harrow took revenge on the dragon, because of what the dragon did to his wife. There's the assumption there, and then like even gives more weight to what King Harrow says to Colum in that letter of like, don't let the past define you. Be your own person, and I think that to contextualize that, it's probably thinking about King Harrow, thinking about how he took revenge, and this sort of continued this cycle. One little thing is I liked, there's a line that Viren says, after, he's talking about after they returned, and how the two kingdoms of Katalis and the other one that I'm blanking on, of the two queens, how they have like statues of the three queens who end up, sacrificing their lives so that both kingdoms could be plentiful. And I liked his choice of words. He says, these incredible heroes, helped our kingdoms to flourish. And, I feel like in so many shows, they're like, oh, these incredible women, did this thing, or these women did these things. And it's sort of like a, like, oh, we want to praise women, so we want to highlight the fact that they're women. And I like the fact that, he didn't highlight that they were women. He highlighted that they were heroes, because that's what they were. They were heroes first, who happened to be women. And so I liked that language choice of these incredible heroes, because they were. They were. If it wasn't for those three, there would have been issues. And so this is a side note, but I appreciated that language, even coming from Viren. Yeah, so the king's, lines to his son, there's a couple of things. I mean, you see the influence that King Harrow has on his children, and just, it's one thing, it's like you can't show everything. You can't show King Harrow being a good father, but he's a good father because of what his children copies. And, the fact that, we learn that the original time that one line was said was King Harrow to Caleb of, I want to talk to you about life and growing up, and how sometimes there are changes you don't expect. And like, when I saw that, I was like, that hit me. I was like, because, when Caleb is telling that to Ezra in a few episodes ago, he's channeling that, like, a child doesn't remember something like that unless it has an impact on them, unless the person, who is telling them that has had a great impact on them. And like, when you hear that line again, you're just like, your heart, goes out for King Harrow to just have that discussion, and just, for Caleb having to deal with that at a young age, and then for Caleb to try to open that up to Ezra. And that was just like, that this family, family is a big thing, and it's so important. If we have influence on others and have influence on children, like we never know what we say, that it can have an impact on someone. And like, just seeing that, and seeing that manifest in this way, and this season, I just thought that was a neat little touch. And that is just great storytelling. That's just great storytelling right there. It's not something like, sometimes you get a lot of like telling, and narration. Some of the prequels of Star Wars do this, or like, some not so great stories is a lot of telling, but this show does a lot of good showing. And like, that's a good example of like, you can't tell that. That's just, the implications that you get from that is only from seeing it being shown. And so I just thought that was kind of a cool point. And like, even, the King Harrow's advice to Caleb of saying like, reject the past, and, create a brighter future, go in your own direction. And, what he was meaning by this, and I think this is something that can apply to today. It's like, yeah, learn from the past, understand the past, But it's like, if we want to move forward, we have to let the past go. We have to move in our own direction. We have to decide for us what we want. The quote that comes to mind is a quote from, Iroh to Zuko in season 2, which is one of my probably top 5 quotes. It's like, you have to ask yourself the big questions. Who are you and what do you want? It's like, we can't, just because something, our parents did something, or our forefathers or people before us did something, doesn't mean we have to be defined by that. It's time for us to look inward, and it's time for us to decide for ourselves what is our path forward. And that was sort of a hidden theme, in this episode, even with the Pirates of Rice to Rayla, of, like, decide what is important to you. Decide what he said. Yeah, decide what you stand for. And like, that's an important thing. Decide, like, what is it that you stand for, and what is it that you're going to do. And like, that should not be, influenced because of what people did in the past. And I really appreciate that message, that King Hero is saying to Ezra. And that's a mark of a king who, has wisdom. It's not always right, because obviously he's made some mistakes, but recognizes his mistakes and recognizes that, in order for these, wrongs to be righted, we must move forward. And I just think that is an important element and important conversation there. Next thought is Queen Anya. I just love Queen Anya, because she is just not here for Viren's sort of BS, and maybe it's that BS. I think Viren was sort of justified of, telling the story. And Queen Anya is just like, yep, my parents would probably help you, but I'm not my parents, so therefore I'm not gonna help you. And she says this line, she says, I will not, pay for the debt of 100,000 by sending 1 million people into battle, and it's interesting because, again, this is more implication. They didn't say this exactly, but it's almost like, to Queen Anya, and maybe the other kings and queen, but definitely Queen Anya, that like Viren's story actually made it harder to prove his point, because like, what Queen Anya is saying is like, well, this is your fault. You guys decided that you wanted to solve this problem this way with dark magic. You risked, the lives of my parents and, your people. And this is the thing that started this like revenge cycle where, they killed your people, so then you killed their king and their prince, or, stole their egg, and now they're coming back to get you. And I think her reasoning, which I couldn't get behind that, is like, well, this is kind of your fault. Like, why should the other kingdoms put themselves at risk for something that Katalis did? And like, of course, Viren's angle, which, it's definitely gray. His angle is like, well, if we didn't do this, your kingdom would have perished. But I think Queen Anya, I think her approach is like, well, we should have perished. Like, you cut this corner, you put yourself in this predicament, and we can't help you. We're not going to help you. We're not going to support you after you did something stupid. And I think that's valid. I think that's valid. And I think the other kings and queens, even though they didn't say that, there's the one king speaks and it's like, yeah, we sympathize with you, but we can't help you. But I think that's what I got out of that conversation with the Pentarchy, that they weren't going to support, Katalis for something that, like, they created their own problem. And so Queen Anya is just not being like this, 12-year-old, brat who's just giving Viren a hard time. I think she's justified. It's like, well, we're not about to put ourselves in danger because of something you did. And so I thought that I think that is where they were going with that. And I think that's a good point. I think I agree with the Queen. Although I see where Viren is coming from, I think I agree with Queen Anya. and like not being so impulsive to just send people into battle over something that could have been prevented. Um, and so there's that. And then my last little thought, and this is just, very little, but something I appreciate. I just love the voice actor of King Hero. I don't know his name, offhand, but I just love the kind of this diversity of the voice acting cast, and it's something you don't see a lot, especially like in these kids shows. You either like hear all the voice actors all sound the same. They all sound like very educated, Eurocentric people, and I like the fact that this show like mixes it up. You still have that. It's like, Caleb still sounds like that kind of like Eurocentric, cartoon character voice, But it's like King Harold like sounds black, he has that like black kind of swankiness to his voice. And I like that. And or even, like Rayla of having her accent. Like it's just something different, and that's refreshing, just having different voice types, because that really reflects the diversity in the world. Like everyone doesn't sound the same. Like I sound different than a lot of the YouTubers who do reviews, and like that's okay. Like that is an okay thing, and like that diversity is okay. And I just appreciate his voice, because he just adds King Harold's, like even in his letter, he just adds certain elements that just other people just can't do. Like when he said like, oh, I have the super extra secret bonus secret, like this is the way he says that. It's like only he can say it that way. And I just appreciate it, and I'm thankful to the writers and the crew for diversifying even the voice actors, because it's like if you're gonna have a diverse cast as far as like what you're looking at, if the characters are going to be diverse, I think then the voices also need to be diverse. And I'm here for how they have done that this season. So those are my thoughts on the Dragon Prince season 2, episode 6. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts were. What did you think of the Dragon Thunder? Do you think he was as big and bad as dragons are kind of made out to be? What are your thoughts on, King Hero and his mentorship or fathership toward, Callum, and what he says, and just the impact of that line, yeah. And then lastly, what did you think of Queen Anya and the other kings and queen decision to not help Katalis? Do you agree with me in that, you think that they were like, yeah, this is kind of your fault, so we're not going to help you? Or do you think the other kings and queen are stupid and that Anya is really running this show? So let me know what you think in the comments. And as King Hero said, I'll see you on the other side.